I'm daydreaming about dragons again. This is Judd, and I wanted to talk about a game I'm playing right now. I've got about 4 sessions in, maybe in 2 weeks. It's been fast, maybe 3. My friend Aaron and I started playing the game. We both have a love of the gray box, Forgotten Realms, so we like to take it and find little pieces of it and play games in it. And we're playing a game set in Cormyr, which is this kind of cool forest kingdom. And we found this northern edge of it where there's this area called the Stonelands, and above that is the Goblin Marches, and just cool stuff. It's a lot of fun. And I'm thinking about a couple things that are going on with this game that would normally make me a little bit uneasy. For whatever reason, I started writing about the game like a short story, like, writing about the what happened in the game as if it was a story. And before I knew it, I had over 10,000 words, and almost 30 pages. And I have no idea why that happened. I have had a bit of a writer's block for a while, and it's really nice. But at the same time, writing stories about games, I like writing actual play reports, where I write about, hey, this is basically what happened. These are the mechanics that got us there. These were like cool moments. These were interesting moments. These were problems I had. Let's talk it out. I feel like writing stories about it is different, and I'm going to make an analogy. So here we go. Whenever there's that conversation that comes up online of like, are games art, right? I don't really want to talk about it. An argument doesn't interest me of like, are the games art as like books on the shelves, right? Are the books art? Like, I don't even know how you could argue that they're not. It's all graphic design and actual art and words that inspire people to do things, right? What interests me about that question is, are the games we play art, right? And that is art that interests me, because the games we play are less like a painting in the Louvre and more like a bunch of people in a garage with no real audience except the dogs and the cats, strumming on their guitars, playing punk rock as loud as they can. That's the art that the act of gaming is to me. Because you're playing for each other, right? When you're playing role-playing games, the audience is your friends who are playing with you. And streaming, we can talk about that another time. That's a whole other can of wax. Ball of wax, can of worms, ball of worms. You get the idea. So when you get together with friends and you game and you strum out that awesome chord in your garage, it echoes, it's too loud, it's not perfect. If you recorded it and listened to it back to it, it wouldn't sound like a fantasy novel, but certain parts of it would sound like a fantasy novel, and certain parts of it would transcend fantasy novels and be better, and certain parts of it wouldn't fit any of that. And that's what I love about gaming. It's this mishmash art that is, to me, punk rock, right? It's imperfect, it's loud, it's in the moment, and you're making it with your friends, for your friends. And I love that. So when I write actual play reports, I'm not trying to make new art out of the art. I'm trying to remember the art, think about the techniques that got us there, so that I can both remember it and do better next time. I like writing everything down because it helps me be a better GM and a better player. But when I write a story about a game, I worry that I'm getting in the way of the loud strumming power chords that got us there. And I worry that the true nature of the game won't be for what's at the table, but for what ends up in print. And I like, when I game, to have it be about what's in print, or what's at the table, rather. And I don't want it to get diluted. I don't want it to be a situation where it's like, we can't do that. Like, that won't read cool. I don't want that hesitant. And it's not happening at the table. And Aaron knows, you can die and we'll just start another game and we'll figure it out. He knows all my spiel. And he knows that death is on the table and that this can go poorly. But it interests me that this is happening, that I'm writing about this. I usually don't like it. I don't like writing stories about games. I've done it before, and I've done it before successfully, but I definitely don't do it every time. I don't want to put that pressure on the game to be good for some piece of writing. And it's writing just for the love of it, but there's that, the punk rock person in me, not that I was ever a punk rock person, but the punk rock gamer in me wants the game to be the thing. And I just want to make sure the writing's not the thing. And I think it's going well. It's not getting in the way. I showed Aaron what I'm writing. He's enjoying it. He's enjoying it as an artifact to remember the game, which I totally dig. Another cool aspect of writing down actual play reports or writing down anything is that we have something to remember these games by. I love that. I got to say, there are games I played 10 years ago, and I barely remember them. But then when I look back at the actual play reports, they take me right back there. And that's really nice. And they also remind me of the lessons I learned. Because, you do this for a couple decades and you forget. You forget. And then you have to learn those lessons again because this isn't simple. So, yeah, that's what I'm playing. I'm playing this game set in Cormier. He's leading an army. And it's very different. I think a lot of this character came from conversations we had about Civil War, Union Civil War generals and things that people who were good leaders and, people and types of leadership. And not every good leader is William Wallace standing on the battlefield saying freedom, right? There are different, and I like his character because it's such a quiet type of leadership. And he's a good administrator. And as someone who was a library manager, that fascinates me too. And I think that's the other reason why this game is really resonating with me and with Aaron, is because we really both like leading, and we both have led teams. He was in the food service industry, and I was in the library industry, library whatever calling, and we're both not doing it anymore, but we both love thinking about it. And this game allows us to think about leadership and think about it, with swords in a cool way, which is always fun. Swords and dragons pretty much make everything cooler. And it's a lot of fun. And those are the things I'm thinking about. And I imagine that this stuff will come up more as we go on. We're playing using Burning Wheel, and it's been a blast. It's been a real blast. I'm really digging it. So that is what's happening. And I really like it. I hope you liked it too. I just want to go over some of the things I'm thinking about. Writing actual play posts for games, writing stories based on games. I'll post some links if you want to read other stories I've written about games. I ran a game set in the midnight setting, and I wrote about that. A friend of mine was out of action with a bad hip injury from a car accident, and so I would write it up so that he could read it, and after we played, as a kind of way to distract him. And so I'll put a link to the old midnight game on the old N-World forums. I'm not going to put a link to the Google Doc for what I'm writing now because it's too rough, but I might end up sharing it later. So if you really want to see it, email me, contact me, let me know, and maybe we can work something out. But it's a super rough draft. And let me know what you do. What do you do to commemorate your games? What do you do to remember them? Do you have any physical artifacts you create? Because I feel like that's what these writings are for me. They're a physical artifact to remember. What do you do to remember? What do you do? 10 years from now, how will you remember your game? All right, that's me. That's my daydreaming. Let's see what Inspiration Goat's got for us today. Interesting choice. Interesting choice as always, Inspiration Goat. So this week I've got a board game as my inspiration. It is Betrayal at Baldur's Gate. And I think it's a cool game. It's fun. That's not necessarily why I want to talk about it. If it was just about what was fun about it, I think it would be over in the actual play part of the podcast. It's here in inspiration because I think it does really interesting things with like almost mechanizing aspects of being a dungeon master, and breaks them down into pieces that I think are really valuable for people who do this and have done this for a long time, and maybe have done it for so long that you don't even see the pieces anymore because it's just reflex. So it's cool to see how someone makes that mechanically happen in a board game. So check it out. Check out Betrayal, Baldur's Gate. It's a fun game, and it puts structure to a type of game that the first GM I ever played with really loved, which is all the players are kind of exploring and going around and getting involved in the world, and then at some point a switch flips, and it doesn't quite become every player for themselves, but things change, and it becomes much more. There's a little player versus player action sometimes, not with all the things in Betrayal of Baldur's Gate, because it does a lot of different things. But in the game I played, my character got possessed by an evil sword that was it's called Black Razor, so it's very much a Stormbringer, a Stormbringer clone in the best of ways. And the other players had to get the right ion stones in order to defeat me. And it was cool, and they did. But I would definitely check that out if you're a GM, just because it feels like the board game is GMing in a weird way. And it's interesting to see what a board game can do and what it can't do, right? It's very difficult for a board game to take a piece of your history and incorporate it into the game. But I don't think it's impossible. I think it's doable. It would just take a lot more mechanics and a lot more cards and a lot more material on the table. But they can't do it in a way that I think a GM can do it. Of course, right? Like there are things that I think the GM is a valuable role. And I think there are things that that the GM does that I think are really interesting and really good. And I love GMing. It's one of my favorite things to do with friends. But it's interesting to see how a board game turns some aspects of GMing into game mechanics, pure game mechanics, where you're all kind of playing together and exploring around, and it really is kind of fun. So check that out. Betrayal of Baldur's Gate. If you played it, let me know what you think. If there are other games you've played that you feel like simulate GMingness in some cool way, hit me up. Let me know what those are too. I thought it really got me thinking. I liked the game. It took us about an hour and change to play. It wasn't too much. Like sometimes there's just too much stuff going on, and I just don't really enjoy myself with when board games get complicated. And this one didn't feel too complicated. It felt really, really slick. Really good design. So if you've got a board game that you think reflects on your role-playing game experience and inspires it, let me know what it is. Hit me up. I'd love to hear about it. And that's going to be it for this week. I'll talk to you soon. I hope the weather is getting warm. Hope you're processing some vitamin D. And talk to you next time.